The house was silent, except for the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway. It had been years since things felt truly peaceful, especially between the stepdaughter and her stepmother. A fragile truce hung in the air, built on years of compromise and avoidance. The stepdaughter's eyes would often linger on the photos lining the mantelpiece, a collection of moments her biological mother should have been a part of. She watched her father laugh with the stepmother in a picture from a summer vacation, his arm draped possessively over her shoulder, his smile radiant. It was then that the resentment grew. The stepdaughter, Zara, had always been the outsider in her own home. Her father's remarriage had been met with cautious acceptance, but over the years, her stepmother, Mira, had become more than just a second wife. She became a controlling force in the household, chipping away at Zara's confidence, little by little. It wasn't just about household chores or boundaries. Mira's manipulations cut deeper. Conversations were turned into confrontations, small slights became insults, and subtle remarks became scathing criticisms. Zara's father, Ashwin, was a kind man, gentle, loving, but blind to the tension simmering beneath the surface. His love for both women was genuine, but in his effort to keep the peace, he had become unaware of the growing gulf between his daughter and wife. One evening, the final straw came. Zara overheard Mira criticizing her appearance in the kitchen, her voice cold and pointed. Zara's hands trembled as she retreated to her bedroom, her heart pounding with frustration and pain. She thought of the countless times her stepmother had humiliated her in front of family and friends. Each instance chipped away at her self-worth, leaving her with a simmering desire for revenge. That night, Zara began to craft her plan, a slow, calculated scheme designed to expose Mira's true nature. The quiet moments between them would no longer be marked by passivity. Revenge had taken root in her mind, a seed that would soon sprout into action. Zara sat alone in her bedroom, staring at the fading photographs on her desk. Each image told a story that her stepmother, Mira, had slowly rewritten in her mind over the years. It wasn't always this way. Once, Zara had hoped for a family where love and acceptance came easily, but over time, Mira's words and actions carved deep wounds that were impossible to ignore. From the beginning, the relationship had been fraught with misunderstandings. Mira's idea of discipline often came with humiliation, an offhand comment about Zara's choices, a subtle dig at her intelligence, or the constant comparison with her own daughter from a previous marriage. Zara had always been told that her feelings were too sensitive, her reactions too dramatic. Mira would smooth things over with her father afterward, convincing him that it was all just part of family dynamics, while Zara was left to deal with the aftermath alone. Her father, Ashwin, had always been a kind man. A widower, he had married Mira with the best intentions, to create a loving home for Zara. But his perception of peace kept him blissfully unaware of the underlying tension. He would never intentionally hurt his daughter, but his desire to keep the household harmonious blinded him to the ways Mira manipulated situations to her favor. He often praised Mira's efforts, applauding her as the perfect stepmother who managed the household efficiently. Zara could see how much his perception was shaped by Mira's portrayal of her as the difficult one, dramatic, rebellious, ungrateful. Zara, however, knew the truth. She knew that Mira's intentions were rarely pure. Behind the sweet smile and composed exterior lay a woman who thrived on control. She would undermine Zara subtly, feeding her insecurities until Zara questioned her own worth. The more Zara tried to push back, the more Mira seemed to tighten her grasp. Over the years, Zara had built walls around herself, retreating into her own thoughts. She spent her days avoiding conflict, her nights replaying every moment when Mira's words cut the deepest. Even the smallest comments felt like poison, each one leaving a scar on her spirit. It wasn't just about competition, it was about power. Mira wanted Zara to feel powerless, to make her doubt herself in a household where her voice barely mattered. There were moments when Zara wished her father would see through the facade, the manipulation that lay beneath Mira's gentle demeanor. Yet he remained unaware, his love for both women causing him to maintain a delicate balance, an impossibly fragile balance that Zara could no longer endure. Zara sat at her desk, the dim light from the lamp casting long shadows across her cluttered workspace. The notebook in front of her was filled with pages of ideas, drafts, and crossed-out lines. Each thought was carefully considered, weighed, and reconsidered again. Her mind was a storm of emotions, anger, frustration, and a burning desire for justice. She had spent countless nights strategizing how to take control of a situation that had felt hopeless for years. The idea of revenge wasn't something Zara took lightly. She wasn't the type to lash out recklessly, nor did she want to hurt anyone indiscriminately. But she had realized that silence and avoidance would only allow Mira's manipulation to persist. It was time to expose the truth, to reveal Mira's true nature once and for all. The plan began with gathering evidence. Zara started small, jotting down subtle interactions that could later be used against Mira. She recorded moments when Mira made condescending remarks or belittled her achievements, saving every text message and email where Mira's controlling behavior was evident. At first, it felt like a tedious task, but with each piece of information, her confidence grew. She began to see a pattern. Mira's behavior was not occasional. It was methodical and deliberate. Next came the setting of scenarios. Zara understood that a direct confrontation would only escalate the conflict. Instead, she decided to manipulate situations where her stepmother's actions would come back to bite her. She staged small misunderstandings, leaving items in specific places, hinting at information that would expose weaknesses in Mira's story. Zara carefully controlled every detail, making sure there were no loopholes for Mira to escape accountability. However, even as her plan took shape, Zara couldn't ignore the inner turmoil. A voice inside her questioned whether the path she was on was ethical. Was it right to manipulate someone's downfall, no matter how deserving they might be? Zara grappled with her conscience, constantly questioning if her need for revenge was driven by justice or by her own pain and resentment. The fear of losing her father's trust loomed large. Ashwin was her biggest ally, but Zara knew that if things went too far, he might not be able to handle the truth. He had always struggled to balance his love for both women, and the idea of tearing their family apart was unbearable. Zara wasn't just fighting against Mira anymore. She was battling her own moral boundaries and the risk of losing the only family she had left. Yet, the more Zara thought about her options, the clearer her resolve became. She couldn't let Mira continue to poison their lives. Justice had to be served, even if it meant losing a part of the family she once cherished. The night was quiet, the kind of silence that wrapped around Zara like a cloak. She moved through the house like a shadow, every step calculated, every detail accounted for. The evidence she had gathered wasn't just pieces of paper or recordings. It was a weapon, one she intended to wield with precision. The plan was in motion, and there was no turning back. Zara had meticulously set the stage. She had planted subtle hints, an anonymous email here, a forgotten piece of evidence there, ensuring that Mira's true colours would be exposed. Every encounter was rehearsed in her mind, every interaction crafted to elicit the desired reaction. She watched Mira's behaviour with a careful eye, noting how the woman's confidence grew, unaware of the trap that had been set. The first domino fell when Zara subtly manipulated a conversation between Mira and Ashwin. She positioned herself as the observer, a silent witness to a moment where Mira's tone shifted from affection to control. Zara's breath caught as she listened, her heart pounding in her chest. It was subtle, a change in tone, a flicker of impatience, but enough for her to collect the evidence she needed. Days turned into weeks, and Zara continued her methodical execution. Small acts of resistance built up into undeniable proof. Mira's smug confidence began to waver as Zara tightened the noose. Miscommunications became a tool for Zara, carefully setting up situations where her stepmother's words would contradict her own actions. Unexpected plot twists added layers of tension to the narrative. One evening, Zara left a note in Mira's bag, suggesting a fabricated scenario that would make her look deceitful. Mira, unaware of Zara's hand in it, reacted predictably, playing the victim card to Ashwin. In the heat of the moment, Ashwin defended Mira, unaware that he was unknowingly supporting a lie crafted by Zara. The misstep gave Zara the upper hand, a win she had carefully planned. Meanwhile, Zara's emotional state fluctuated between exhilaration and guilt. Every win felt like a triumph, but the toll on her heart was undeniable. She missed the family dinners, where laughter once filled the air, the times when her parents were united, and there was no need for such schemes. But now, those moments were distant memories, replaced by a cold, calculated war. The emotional impact on both sides was palpable. Mira's frustration turned into paranoia, her once composed demeanour crumbling in front of Ashwin. She accused Zara of betrayal, of fabricating a web of lies to ruin her. But no matter how vehemently Mira protested, the evidence spoke louder than her denials. Ashwin, torn between his love for both women, struggled to process the depth of the deceit he was witnessing. His confusion was mirrored in his attempts to navigate the storm between them. As the final pieces of Zara's plan fell into place, a realization struck her: there was no going back. The family she once knew was forever altered. The victories she claimed were hollow, the cost too high. Yet justice had been served, a bitter truth that neither Mira nor Ashwin could ignore. Zara's plan had been methodical, precise, and seemingly foolproof. Each piece of evidence, every planted conversation and subtle manipulation had led to the inevitable exposure of Mira's true nature. But what Zara hadn't anticipated was how quickly the fragile threads of her family would unravel once the truth came to light. The day the final piece of evidence surfaced was a storm of emotions. Mira's betrayal was undeniable, and Ashwin's confusion turned into anger and heartbreak. Zara watched from the sidelines as her stepmother crumbled under the weight of her own lies, but despite her victory, a gnawing sense of unease took root. The more she witnessed the fallout, the clearer it became. The destruction she had caused was not confined to Mira alone. Ashwin's disappointment was palpable. His love for Zara had always been unconditional, but witnessing the extent of her manipulation created a rift between them. His grief stemmed from the realization that his attempts to keep the peace had allowed his family to be torn apart by mistrust. In the aftermath, Zara felt an ache deep in her chest, a betrayal not just by Mira, but by herself. Her father's heart, so full of hope, had been shattered by her actions. Mira, on the other hand, refused to go down quietly. She fought back, using every resource at her disposal to discredit Zara. The accusations flew: manipulation, deceit, even emotional abuse. She painted Zara as the villain in their family's story, a claim that began to gain traction. Friends, relatives, and even some of Ashwin's colleagues were forced to choose sides, their loyalty shifting under the weight of the scandal. For Zara, the emotional toll became unbearable. The power she had wielded felt hollow, empty. Revenge had given her temporary satisfaction, but the void it left was vast. She couldn't escape the haunting realization that her family had been pushed to the brink. The arguments, the tears, the accusations, all of it had torn apart a life she once cherished. In her quiet moments, Zara reflected on the transformation she had undergone. The once hopeful daughter had become a strategist, calculating every move like a chess player intent on victory. But at what cost? She thought back to her mother, whose memory was now tainted by a war she never sought. The idea of continuing this cycle seemed unbearable. Ashwin's heartbreak softened into a desire to heal. Though still shaken, He recognized the damage done and wanted nothing more than to bring peace to his family. Zara, through tear-streaked eyes, reached out. She admitted the extent of her guilt, her desperation to make things right. The resolution began with dialogue, not accusations or finger-pointing, but a genuine exchange of hearts. Ashwin listened, his years of emotional distance finally giving way to understanding. Meera, though resistant, started to see glimpses of the daughter she once knew, a girl who had been driven to desperate measures by a lifetime of pain. It wasn't an easy road back. Trust wasn't something that could be rebuilt overnight. There were moments of anger, moments of reflection, and moments of reconciliation. Slowly but surely, the pieces began to come together again, though they were forever altered. Zara's role in her family's turmoil became a lesson, a painful, transformative experience that reshaped how they all understood love, forgiveness, and the true meaning of family. The storm that had once raged within Zara's family had begun to settle. The aftermath of her calculated revenge had left deep scars, but amidst the rubble, a new understanding was emerging. As Zara reflected on the journey that had brought them here, she saw the blurred lines between right and wrong, between justice and retribution. Revenge, Zara had discovered, was not a simple pursuit. It had been her weapon, a tool designed to dismantle years of hurt and manipulation. But as she witnessed the fallout, she understood that it came with its own burdens. The satisfaction of exposing Meera's true nature had been fleeting, overshadowed by the emotional toll on her father and the fractured trust within their home. Revenge, she realized, might offer temporary relief, but it never fully erases the pain it causes. Forgiveness, on the other hand, was harder to grasp. Meera's efforts to mend the rift were met with skepticism at first, her apology seeming hollow to those who had been hurt the most. Yet, as time passed, Zara began to see the sincerity behind her stepmother's words. Forgiveness wasn't about forgetting, but about accepting the past and making peace with it, however imperfectly. It required understanding, not just of the harm inflicted, but of the capacity for growth and change in others. Family dynamics, as Zara came to understand, were fragile and nuanced. The relationships that once felt strong could be dismantled by misunderstandings and pain. However, they were also resilient. Healing, though slow and painful, was possible when both sides were willing to listen and grow. Zara's journey had shown her that family was not defined by blood alone, but by the willingness to stand together through hardship. In the end, Zara and her family reached a bittersweet place. The wounds were not forgotten, but they began to scar over, forming new bonds that, while different from before, were still capable of love and support. Ashwin, once caught between two opposing forces, found himself more connected to both women than ever before. Not as the man caught in the middle, but as a father learning to embrace complexity. Zara's future, though still uncertain, held promise. She had learned that true strength didn't lie in revenge, but in resilience, an ability to face the challenges of family with an open heart, knowing that healing was a journey, not a destination. The quiet hope of healing spread through their home, a slow but steady restoration of trust, understanding, and love.